Thank you, Mr. Garrick. And with that, I'd invite the Chief Executive Officer of Los Angeles County, William T. Fujioka, to come forward and make his remarks for us. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. As stated, my name is Bill Fujioka. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for LA County. And this efficiency initiative has a very special place in my heart. It was something that I created back in 2009, and it started through a conversation when I worked a poll with one of our plumbing supervisors for the Department of Parks and Recreation. We had some dead time, and I turned to him and said, if you were me, if you had the resources and the budget, what would you do to save money? And we were just talking. And he had immediately gave me 6 ideas. And one idea was, the first idea was great. And I said, I want to fund these at least 2 or 3 of these ideas. And from there, we decided that the best source of, say, ideas would really come from the rank and file. From that moment, in addition to funding those initiatives, I went to our department heads. I told them we're going to start an efficiency initiative, have a county-wide application, and it'll be run through our office, the Chief Executive Office. But I want to ask each one of you to put a senior member of your executive team in charge of your departmental efficiency initiative. I want it staffed with individuals from all levels of the organization, from rank and file to supervisory to management levels. We created an intranet website where we literally have every single department's efficiency initiatives online. Frank is Frank, who's next to me, Frank Chen's next to me. He staffs this initiative. We track their progress on a monthly basis. Where we find an initiative that has a county-wide application, we immediately take that initiative and we share it with every department. And there's one example, a good example that kind of highlights waste, government waste, but also identifies how that waste can be attacked in some respects and addressed. One person came to me as we put this initiative together, and I engaged all the department heads in one-on-one discussions. And they said, you know, Bill, we should look at our telephone lines. I said, telephone lines? He said, well, I was looking at monthly reports, and we have thousands of unused telephone lines, but yet we pay for them every single month, but not a single call goes out from these lines. So we put together teams, two-person teams, who went through all the lines and then talked to department heads and said, let's look at that. Because oftentimes, and you'll see it here throughout state government, a new department head comes in and says, I don't like my desk here, put it over here. But then they have to move the data line and the telephone line. Every data line costs $35 a month. Every telephone line, $14. We eliminated thousands and thousands of lines to the tune of $4 million in savings. To the point where the head of AT&T, I saw him at an event and walked up to me and said, you dropped my bill by $4 million. And I said, shame on you, you should have talked to us and let us know about that. We're now looking at fax lines. The fax machine is going the way of the beeper because everyone now scans and emails it. But yet we have hundreds and hundreds of fax lines. My office alone had 3 of them for whatever reason. It has 1 now because we need at least 1 fax machine. We may only have 1 on the floor at one point. We've created we worked with our Department of Health Services. We have a chief pharmacist who is brilliant. And she put together a drug formulary where we're pushing the use of generic drugs. And it seems simple, but we're pushing that real hard. She's already saved, I think she was up to about $78 million by pushing that one initiative, generic drugs. But the key to it is not these one-time fixes. What we've done is we moved it into the county's culture. We put it's addressed in our strategic plan. It's in our budget instructions. We have our budget worksheets now have a section that says efficiency initiative. Every single department head knows that he or she is required to come forward and speak on their initiatives that they've put in place. So we're moving it into the culture. And I also have this program, it's somewhat of a, the name is a little bit corny. I call it my CEO Eat What You Kill program. And I've told department heads that where you find economies, where you create through your efficiency initiative, where you create savings, I'll let you keep some of those savings, or at least go to our board and say they should keep some of these savings to put it back into the departments. Now, the last 3 years, actually we're going into the 4th year, we've been in a deficit funding mode, deficit budgeting mode, like Sacramento. And each and every department has had to cut, on average, 17% of their budget over the last 4 years. Some departments as high as 30%. Unlike a lot of other municipalities or other government entities, we have not had major layoffs. We've had no service reductions. We've had no furloughs. A lot of this is, I think, it's a testament to the management staff we have, but to some degree our efficiency initiative has helped us, because these are not just one-time savings. They're savings that represent an ongoing impact on our budget and then our county services. During the budget hearings, when I sit with a department head, they know they must come forward and say, what are they doing on an efficiency basis? But the other key, I mentioned earlier, I just said briefly, if we find something, whether it's telephones or supply chain management or whatever, that has a county-wide impact, or at least a county-wide application, Frank would take that and we share it with all the different departments and the efficiency coordinators. We're going to, and I may mess up the term, but our IT people came forward with a process to put our computers in sleep mode. And is it $5 a month?
Yes, per PC.
And it sounds not much, but we put them in sleep mode at night. Otherwise, they were staying on all night. But we have a process. We can now put them in sleep mode. Every single computer is saving $5 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in 2 departments alone, it's $600,000 a year. We're going to the thin client. A thin client is like a dumb server. It's not a lot of offices had, each person had a PC. Instead, this thin client is it's a little bit larger than my BlackBerry. It sits on a desk. It hooks up to to a mainframe, and it provides everything your average computer user will need, from word processing and accessing databases and so on. But they're probably 1/3 the cost. And LA County buys thousands and thousands of computers every year. We even put together, I mentioned the drug formulary, we put together a supply formulary. Because one day I was in a meeting, and I was talking to all the department heads, and I said, everyone, put your pin up. And they thought I was probably losing my mind. Put the pin up. In that room of 40 department heads, there's probably 30 different pins. Because everyone had open access to the supply cabinet. They can buy anything they wanted. So we put a formulary together to say, from this point on, here are the pencils you can buy, here are the pins you can buy, the pads of paper, the rulers, the scissors, and so on. We put that out. That's going to save us about $1 million. And we told everyone else, if you want to buy something special, go down to Office Depot and buy it yourself. But this is what the county will provide. We went to a 2-year effort to complete and implement a new supply chain management system in the Department of Health Services. What happened in Health Services, like any other major health organization, not only at the hospital, but within units within the hospital, ordered their own supplies. And oftentimes they order them on a rush or urgent basis, which costs a lot to deliver that particular supply. But we found many instances where they weren't getting, not only were they weren't getting the cheapest price, but they weren't getting the price that we negotiated with some of the carriers, because they were going right to the catalog. We went through millions of data lines. It was an amazing effort, but we turned on that supply chain management system for the first time. It turned on July 1st. And we're pushing it forward. Now every single unit in every one of our hospitals and our health centers will be on the same supply chain management system. But we're going through a number of things, in-house services, that we know will save millions and millions of dollars. Supply chain alone, we're estimating I believe we'll get $10 million. But what we looked at is we're looking at every single corner and every program in the county to see where we can find that savings and where we can find an efficiency. But like I said, to make this work, we had to move it into our culture. We had to make it part of our daily work activities. And by doing so, it's, I think it's become one of the strongest initiatives the county's had. Departments have had, I forget the term, but they've actually, I've gone to meetings, one meeting I went to had 400 members of the Department of Park and Recs, from custodians all the way up to the department head. And they had an all-day workshop to come up with efficiency initiatives. Everything from smart sprinklers in our golf courses to waterless urinals to we're moving to tankless water heaters for our pools and our other facilities. Other departments, our community and senior services, have had a similar type of function. And so we've energized departments, we've energized employees, and we worked with our labor group to say, give us your ideas, because for every dollar we save, it means we can avoid the furloughs and the layoffs and put, make sure the county's fiscal health is as strong as possible. But with that, I'll take any questions. If you have any, we can give you further examples. I think Frank has sent information to you that has some of the things that we've done. But if you notice that some of the, whether it's on our quarterly reports to our board or maybe just a worksheet, you'll find something in every single department. That's what makes this work. When we make it part of the county culture, that's when it becomes something that's not a one-time event. We say, okay, this year, don't buy 10 cars. Woohoo, save money. We didn't buy 10 cars. But there's a different way to look at it, and that's moving it into your culture.
Mr. Fujioka, thank you very much. I have several questions, but I'm going to ask other members of the committee if they have some they'd like to ask before I get to mine.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I had to step out for a minute. Was reviewing your report here that you provided to us over the evening, and was interested, coming from a telecommunications background, in the 38,000 telephone lines. How did you achieve that? I know that that's an ongoing kind of sometimes small but subtle amount that can add up very quickly.
$4 billion.
Yes, and I noticed that it added up to $4 million annually, that is, and so that's an ongoing savings that you were able to achieve by reducing the number of lines. Is it generally the rotary that there were extra lines attached to for multiple calls coming in, or what?
There were actually phone lines in the wall that were live, both a combination of phone lines and data lines. And we, through our internal services department, we compiled a list of lines that had no activity, no calls whatsoever. And we asked each department to review each individual line and tell us if they needed them. Initially, we had a marginal compliance at best. But what happened is that I have a meeting of department heads every month. And every month I take out the list and say, okay, I have 15% compliance in looking at these lines and telling us if these lines are necessary. Next meeting I'd say, okay, I only have 30% compliance. And under the county's governance structure, department heads, the majority report through my office. And I also told them that for their MAP increases, their merit pay increases, this would be one of the top elements that I'll look at when I recommend your rating and recommend your not only your performance rating, but any pay increase. But we started driving it and driving it and driving it. We went through, some of you, I know most of you, if not everyone knows, we closed King Hospital.
Yes.
It was a very difficult thing to do. And we're on the road to reopening King Hospital and building a new one. But at one point, someone said, I bet you we didn't turn off all those phone lines. And we went up there and checked them, and they were live in empty rooms and empty offices. And we turned off probably 1,000 lines in that building alone. But I had mentioned earlier that what's very, very common, you get a guy like me, I'm the new CEO, I come in and say, I want my desk pointing in this direction. Not uncommon. I got the Wild Bill Hickok syndrome. I can't have my back to a door. And so I turn my desk around. But it's, the guys would come in, men and women from ISD, and they'll put in new data lines for me, and new phone lines to accommodate the repositioning of my desk. But then someone else doesn't turn off those lines because that work order may go somewhere and it's not followed up quickly. We've found that throughout the county. We've turned off thousands and thousands of lines. Every data line, $35 a month. Every landline, $15 a month. To save $4 million, you can, it's simple math. There's thousands of lines that we turned off. And now, so we went through the first time. And the first month I got kind of a, I got marginal compliance, but we kept driving it and driving it. Now we're going through the lines again. And then the second round, we're looking at fax lines. And we're up to probably, I think it's about $750,000 in the second round. We will pass $5 million on this one alone. And that's not one time. That's ongoing savings.
First of all, sir, I want to thank you for your presentation. I was very impressed with what you were talking about and the fact that you're willing to go down in the weeds and kind of get some opinions from the troops, if you will, to improve efficiency, waste, fraud, abuse, all that stuff. And it reminds me, and I've told the story, I think, in Veterans Committee about in World War II when after the Allies had invaded D-Day, they couldn't get through the hedgerows, and they couldn't break through with their tanks. And then it was either a sergeant or a corporal suggested, not the generals, a sergeant or a corporal, about welding this girder to the front of the tank where you would actually be able to crash through, and it just changed the course of warfare. And it actually opened up the breakout and perhaps ended the war by 6 months, who knows. But the point I'm making, I have a background in the military, and we used to have what was called a beneficial suggestion program, or the BENI-SUG program. Everything is acronyms. But this was where somebody that works in the trenches, whether they're with telephones or what have you, they make a suggestion that, and I'm sure right now there's somebody in one of these organizations that are saying, you see what they're doing now in Sacramento or LA or what have you, you know how stupid it is? If they had changed this to this, they could be saving a lot of money. We wouldn't be spinning our wheels over and over again. But that word never gets to the people that make those decisions and changes that are truly, truly can make a difference with a lot of organizations that are having trouble surviving. So my long-winded question is, do you have something similar where you might have a cash or some type of monetary incentive for efficiency suggestions that come up through the chain of command? I know you obviously reached out and talked to your folks, but the people that deal with this stuff every day, I know they see certain things and they just shake their head and say, how can these people, whether they're politicians or what, be so stupid? If we could only change this, and you send it in and I get a $500 check for, telling them something they should have done 10 years ago.
We do have a program like that where individuals can actually share in some of the savings. But because of what we've had to deal with, what you've had to deal with here in Sacramento and every other county or city in the state of California, I've told departments and I've talked to the employees personally to say what we're going to do with these savings is avoid furloughs. And so we're going to help everyone. We're going to avoid the layoffs and the service reductions and so on. And even though when this started with a plumber supervisor who gave me this great idea and saved us a lot of money, close to $500,000 on a very simple idea, he could have said, I want money back through the savings program. But the emphasis has been on how this impacts the body as a whole and not individuals. And as we go forward, we may reemphasize that program that provides a monetary reward or an award for an individual. But it's right now, you know, we've gone through one of the worst recessions ever, and this program has helped us immensely. It's helped us to get through that program, and that's been the overall emphasis. And you know what that one idea was, that plumbing supervisor? So I first was talking to him. He goes, I said, what would you do? His name is Ron. And he goes, well, first he didn't believe who I was. I had to pull out my ID and a business card. And then he said, you know, Bill, we have 6 swim beaches, and every week we buy 40,000 gallons of water. We pump it into the swim beach and mix it with chlorine, and to make the swim beach, because it pushed out this big pump. And I said, really? He goes, you know, Bill, if you gave me money, I'll buy a pump and just circulate the existing water. But no one will give me the money to do this. That's not rocket science, folks. 40,000 gallons a week. You times that by a year, we're talking over 2 million gallons of water being wasted. You times that by 6 swim beaches, the money is easy to figure out. I immediately put that in the budget, bought those pumps, installed the pumps, put them in, and now they're working. We're saving that one initiative alone is saving us about $400,000 or $500,000 a year. But plus, we're saving the water. That's even more important, the environmental savings that we achieved.
Mr. Geary?
Yes. I recognize that you have a kind of whistleblower line that you identified over 500 calls, and those are all with internal employees, coming from internal employees, as I understand it. Is that correct?
True. We have a fraud hotline,
Okay.
but that's separate from our efficiency initiative.
Do you have a external line that you advertise or make available for the public to report potential, where they may identify anything from a broken sprinkler that continues to run, thereby just the subject you were mentioning, wasting water, or other opportunities that may exist as it relates to reporting potential savings or some waste or fraud?
Our auditor controller has that hotline that addresses all those different areas. She gets calls at everything from the obvious fraud to waste and abuse.
Have you tracked the savings on those?
I have not.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ms. Lowenthal?
Good morning. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Do you have a Whistleblower Protection Act?
Oh, absolutely. It's built into the not only our county system, but also the law, protected by law.
And so do you find that people give you information that they might not otherwise, and of course there's no retaliation, but do you find that they have concerns or ideas that would in fact end up in greater efficiencies for the county?
Well, those type of calls come through our fraud hotline, and it's totally anonymous. I myself get a number of anonymous letters that identify some fraud and waste. What we've done, we have the fraud hotline process that's maintained by our auditor controller. But then we have the efficiency initiative that we maintain. We have over 573, 76 ideas from county staff that we post on our intranet site. So anyone going onto our site, any department head could look at it. And that's anonymous. And there'll be everything from, you need to fire this person. They haven't listed me yet, but I wouldn't post that one anyway. But they have everything from that to, there's been some great ideas that come from employees. And when you announce something, we've all had the experience of announcing something, and it's faddish for the first 2 or 3 months or a year, and you get a number of recommendations, then people forget about it and move on. The way we've managed this program, especially requiring departments to give us monthly updates, you can go online and see progress, and we're driving that progress.
With the discretionary funding that exists with the county, have there been any recommendations regarding that discretionary funding and how it's utilized by the supervisors? Do you have any say in that, and does that work toward greater efficiencies, or are they ultimately, I don't want to say gifts, but supportive of valuable agencies throughout the county, nonprofits and so on? How does that connect?
In a very large way, when it comes to supporting social programs or supporting capital improvements, capital being in recreational centers or senior citizen centers, where the money from a board member's, if you call it discretionary funds, is somewhat, that's probably not the best term, because sometimes that term is misinterpreted, but those funds are used throughout the county in a very, very positive way. But what we've done, I had mentioned before you came in, that we built it into our budget process, where I've told department heads, I use a term, you can eat what you kill. I've told department heads that because we don't have any new funds right now, because of the fact that, like any other government entity, our revenue has gone down considerably. But if you want a new program, you find the efficiency, you save the money. I promise that I'll take some of that money and put it back in your department to fund that program. And we've had very positive results for that. Because if it's, people are going to work hard if they know that, it's going to help them. And Parks and Rec, they wanted, the rec leaders wanted jackets, because in some of our tougher neighborhoods, they wanted a jacket that said, I'm a Parks and Rec person, I'm staff. It was a big deal for them. I went to the department and said, find me one of your initiatives that saves some money. I promise we'll buy those jackets, and worked with labor too.
One more quick question, Mr. Chair, if I may. Are you using performance-based budgeting in any of your departments?
Performance-based?
Zero-based?
I know everyone has, they'll talk about zero-based, they'll talk about performance-based. I've put together budgets for the last 12 years, whether with LA City or LA County. We looked at every single aspect of the department. And so there's different names to call it, but it is based on, especially now when every single county department has had to cut at minimum 17, on average, 17% of their budget. So we went through the whole budgets and we said, here's what we feel is absolutely critical, and here's what's not so critical. But here's what has an impact on the people that we serve, the public. And we've gone through that process every year. When you deal with deficit budgeting for 4 years, you are zero-basing it. I don't care what anyone says.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lozano. We're going to take a quick pause and establish a quorum. So if the clerk would call the roll.
Dickinson,
Here?
Garrick, Block, Buchanan, Cook,
Here.
Fletcher, Grove, Hagman, Huber, Lowenthal, Mitchell, Dr. Pan, Portantino.
Okay, we do have a quorum. Ms. Buchanan.
I apologize for seeing your initial comments, but was happy with your answer on the performance-based budgeting, because in the state we still do workload budgeting, and workload budgeting really provides the reverse incentive to actually make changes, because if you can, workload budgeting says whatever we gave you this year, or whatever you spent, we're going to start out with that as a base next year. So if you figure out a way to do things more efficiently and can save 25%, we punish you and give you less money and reward the people who do things the same. So I think I obviously believe that's a critical part of our system. But and if you answered this in your opening comments, I apologize. But I ultimately, having whistleblower protection and fraud hotlines are good, because if there is abuse, you want to catch it. And having suggestion type boxes are good. But ultimately, you've got to sustain a culture that promotes change and efficiency and rewards, looking at doing things differently. I mean, I'm a big fan of Deming, where he said 15% of the problems are with the people, 85% are with the system. If you want to improve quality, improve the system. So, and if you change a culture, then it's sustainable, because you mentioned, fads come and go. And whether, and I've seen them come and go, whether it's education when I was on school board for, almost 2 decades, or when I was in business or whatever. So, what do you think is the key to building that culture so that your managers and workers truly do work together to change and take advantage of ways that jobs can improve and satisfaction can improve, service, and you can actually, say, take advantage of new technology or whatever you're going to do to reduce costs at the same time?
I had mentioned earlier that it has to be an ongoing effort. It has to be emphasized at every opportunity. We've built it into our budget forms. We've built it into the budget hearings that I have with every department head each year, where there's a section on the budget presentation that says efficiency initiatives, where they have to identify what they're doing. We have staff assigned to monitor departmental efficiency initiatives. So we have an intranet site that they're asked to review on an ongoing basis. I've incorporated the efficiency efforts into a department heads. We call it MAP goals. That's management appraisal and performance pay system, so that their pay is built on at least how we assess the performance as a number of factors. But an important factor is, what have you done to achieve efficiencies in your department? In the last 3 years, we haven't put any new money in departments in general. The only new money has been focused on efficiency initiatives, where a department head has said, I have this IT idea. Register recorder was a great one. At one point, we had 40 people manually processing grant deeds. And we automated that. It's an online system now. During the worst recession we've ever had to deal with, we found money. I found money and moved and gave it to the head of a register recorder to implement that program. And so it's not something you just announce one day with a memo and say, we're going to be efficient, and then you walk away. It has to be something where you push in every single venue and every single opportunity, and that's what we've done. It's in our strategic plan now.
And do you do any kind of surveys of your employees or your customers to measure the impact of what you're doing?
Well, that happens at the department level. As part of our efficiency intranet site, we have a section for employees to submit ideas. In the intranet site, it's restricted to only for those users within the county, but anyone can go online and look at it. And anyone can go online and look at the progress of any other department. So a department head can go online and say, let's see what Parks and Rec, let me see what internal services is doing, or what I'm doing in my office, the chief executive office. But as I mentioned, I don't know if you heard this, if we find something that has a county-wide application, like going with, we're looking at printers right now. I don't know if it happens in the state, but at one point, I'm almost embarrassed to admit, the number of printers we have at each person's desk, and not having, what's the term? Work group printers.
Right.
At one point, we found 30,000 printers. We have 100,000 employees. Of those 100,000 employees, I'd guarantee there's not a deputy sheriff that has a printer in his car, or a public works person, or animal care and control person. So you start taking out the field workers, pretty soon you almost have a one-for-one. Mm-hmm. It's amazingly inefficient.
Yeah, you're probably saving more on your utility bills, too.
Well, from utilities, from the toner waste, from maintenance, from replacement. And you get these work group printers that are very, very efficient. And the new ones, and the old ones, you send a query or you send a command to print, and they all just stack up in a basket. You have
Right.
to go to the basket and go, where's my
Sure.
print job?
Now they don't print until you actually put your code in as a
Yeah,
printer.
you walk
Yeah.
up to it, put the code in, or slots or whatever. We're going to find huge savings there. We've asked departments, we went through a very aggressive server efficiency effort.
Are you creating your own local cloud? What are you doing there?
Well, it's not as much clouds. I'm not fully convinced yet to go to the cloud. It scares me. The security scares me. But what we've done is we've had departments who say, I have to have my own server. So they buy the server with capacity that would handle 10 departments, but they got to have their top line, the
Right.
best server. So instead, what we've done is through our chief information officer, is we're combining departments onto one server with the necessary protections. We've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That is, by the way,
in
that is,
server management.
that is a local cloud. That's what it is. The cloud all it is instead of having servers all over, you're basically combining it, and it's small because there's no point, and then you don't have to have people maintaining them all over either. You just have to maintain a central
That's
one.
what we're doing. We're
Well,
looking everywhere.
I just applaud what you're doing. By the way, we're still training COBOL programmers in the state to maintain systems, so hopefully we'll follow through on our initiatives. There'll be the will, even given our tight budget situation, to follow through so that we can
Sadly,
find
they
the
have no
20%
COBOL.
fee. Yeah, that's right.
That's the.
Well, the problem is, I mean, think of a young, talented programmer coming out of college. Why on earth would you go to work for the state,
Yeah.
working on systems that are 25 or 30 years old when you can work on new systems? I mean, it's
You mentioned that.
Fun of legacy systems. Dr. Pan.
You said something real quick. You mentioned during real difficult times, to find initiatives and so on. We've gone through the worst 3 years, going on our fourth year of the recession and the downturn and everything else. But to me, it creates these amazing opportunities. Because if you tell departments that, here's your choice. Either you cut this and lay off these folks, or you find an efficiency, and that money will go back into your department. It's created some, I think, outstanding opportunities.
I agree with you, and I applaud everything you've done. I wish we did the same. We just said, furloughs or whatever. We didn't go to departments and say, you need to cut your budgets 10%. What's the best way to do it? Which I think, if you empower people, I think ultimately they can come up with good solutions.
Okay, Dr. Pan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fujioka, for coming here today. Tell us what's going on in LA County. I appreciate some member Buchanan bringing up Deming. I'm sure you're familiar with the book, The Machine That Changed the World. Talked about the...
I read that book.
Yes. So that's about it's now getting a little bit of ancient history, but it's about, lean, the lean process. And actually, I think one of the, most marked parts about it is that are sometimes known as the Toyota production model, but how everybody in the plant was empowered to even stop the whole plant in order to look to put in changes that would ensure that the continuous improved quality, and then of course also leading to increased efficiencies and decreased costs. One of the things that I was also struck by in both reading some of the examples and what you talked about, for example, the pool example, is that in order to achieve efficiency, often you have to be able to invest. So often we have a mentality that, well, we're short of money, we're short of, we don't have any resources, so therefore, actually you run into situations like the gentleman at the pool where probably he might have asked somebody for a pump and they said, we have no money for that, so just keep doing what you're doing, and not realizing that we have to actually have, in order to achieve efficiencies, we need to invest up front in order to then achieve the cost savings farther down the line. So I thought you just, and I know you've talked in your previous comments already, made a lot of references, but just maybe comment a little bit about how it's great to say you're going to save money later on, but how do you find the resources up front to make the kind of investments that then allow you to achieve the savings that you got later on? It's not just all about cutting, it's also about getting money to invest to make that happen. I'd like you to just comment on that.
Well, we've gone through a very structured process where a number of departments will come up with their initiatives and say, especially in the IT area, will say, if you only buy us this, if you'd only would invest in, like right now, we're trying to change our property management system. And we're working with some of our neighboring counties on how we handle the collection of our property tax. And it's going to require an investment of dollars. There are ways for, even during these very, very difficult times, to find that the money to invest those dollars, but it must go through a very deliberative, very structured process. We look at it and say, yes, this rises to the level of possibly taking money from other areas of the county to invest in this initiative, because the short term, but more importantly, the long-term effect will create these very significant savings. And I've been successful with our board in convincing them to fund some of these newer initiatives. And sometimes you have to sacrifice something. But the long-term effect, people oftentimes only look for that short-term gain. But that long-term impact is critical. But the other thing that's very important, it sends a message to the department and other county departments, because they'll say, geez, look at what happened for our public defender's office received some money to, we Wi-Fi'd one of our courthouses. And now our attorneys and public defenders and DAs can sit at their desks in the courtroom and do legal research. It's hard to quantify those savings, but we've saved a lot of time and possibly some overtime. But when people would see that, even during the most difficult times, we're funding some of these initiatives, it really it incentivizes people. And it's that the old proverbial, proof is in the pudding, But we've gone through that effort.
Well, I guess I just say that certainly, I think making that a priority and showing that you're willing to invest, basically time and money are usually the two most important resources in these types of initiatives, is I think a very important thing to do to shape the culture
That's the culture.
right.
That's the culture change.
Right. People see what you do to decide what really the priorities are. You can say what you want, but what you actually do in terms of ways you invest time and money then define the culture. Thank you.
Well, what we also do, is the fact that we highlight some of the major initiatives, and when we send information to the board, like anyone else, a department head will see that and go, whoa, look at this person got highlighted. This person received some extra funding for that. We can do it too. So you incentivize it. But that's part of the cultural aspects. You have to move it into culture. You have to work it constantly.
My colleague, did you have any questions, Mr. Agnew?
Shannon, that I think she ran to another committee.
Oh,
but
go
if it's
ahead.
okay.
Yes.
Follow up on something. I'm going back. Most government entities have a lot of assets too, and that's always something I worked a lot with in our county and our city. Is how do you maximize the physical assets, or better yet, how do you do without sometimes? Even with programs like. One of the things I know, I worked with LA County quite a bit on the workforce investment boards. You have several boards, several one-stops, multiple agencies doing kind of the same thing, with the idea that people will come to you for those services. And I'm just wondering on that more efficiency way, one of the ideas I never got to implement in San Bernardino before I left, but to take the services down to most of the people who need those type of services don't have a lot of resources to get on public transportation or drive to a physical location where you have a lot of costs and a lot of overhead to keep those locations going. Think about anything about both virtual, of the internet, or training actual city representatives where they walk in and you have mobile, use other people's physical sites, use the libraries, use the city halls, and bring your job trainers, bring your counselors into those areas, half a day each week, and that way you're bringing the services to the people who need the services versus having them figure out how to find out what's helps out there and then bring them back to your one-stop physical locations, those type of things. I guess that's one comment. And then the secondly is with a lot of the vacant land, so to speak, or building assets, what ideas do you have as far as utilizing them? I know in the state here, we had a lot, obviously the state has a lot of vacant land all over the place. And one of the things I ran into is that if an agency owns a piece of property, if they sell it, they don't get anything out of that sale. It goes to general fund, and so there's no real incentive to say, hey, this is surplus anymore. We may need it sometime in the future. We may, 40 years we haven't used it, but we never know. 40 years from now we may need it, and it costs so much more to buy than it would be to sell right now. So we put in a long-term lease type alternatives where you can do the private-public partnerships of long-term lease. So just a couple of comments and maybe your thoughts on that.
With respect to the land, I think all of us are a product of our experiences, and I'm a farmer's kid, farmer who became a gardener, who's now, in my current position. And one of my core beliefs is you don't give up your land. It might be real hard to get back in the future. But we have a real estate asset group who looks constantly at ways we can restructure our leases. We've bought 3 buildings for our Public Social Services Department that most of it, 90% of it, is paid through Savine funds, through federal funds. But we bought them because we structured the contracts with the folks we were leasing it from, that after a specific period of time, we had the option of buying that facility for $1. And so we've bought 3 facilities in the past 4 years for $1. Of course, the landlord was a little upset that we exercised that option, was shocked that we would, because 90% is paid by the federal government. But 10% was still paid by us. We own that building now. We're looking at renovations of our existing buildings to make the space much more efficient. We're going to renovate our Hall of Justice with the intent of reducing as much of our lease costs as possible.
But you still have, when you have physical assets and buildings, so certain things like courts you're not going to get away with.
True.
But for your Health and Human Services, for example, again, it's a lot of administrative functions that you need a staff, but the services part of it, I always thought it was a little bit engineered backwards, where you expect people to come to you, stand in line, do their thing, and a lot of times I find out a lot of people didn't know what resources they had to get them back on track, versus get a mobile unit and drive to where they're at, where the need is, and have a certain schedule where you could do it, where you don't physically have a asset that you have to maintain. And I know LA County's spending a ton of money right now. We're trying to on a lot of retrofitting of buildings and could bring them up to, it's a lot of physical asset expenditures versus actually trying to get that money into the services, and it may be easier to bring those services to the public versus asking the public.
Well, we've also done that, where we have, we've encouraged, in fact, it's an initiative that Supervisor Antonovich is championing, and that's to create as many online applications as possible, so that you have a lot of families who either through their own assets or through our public libraries can access our service via computer to get everything from birth certificates to, I mentioned earlier, the grant deed. So we are trying to do that. We have some mobile units that helped us during the that recent major flu outbreak was threatening every entity throughout the United States. We had mobile units taking out the vaccines wherever we could, instead of expecting people. I think there's then come to our facilities. What you're touching on is something I believe is, at one point there's the arrogance of government saying, you need us, come to our facility. What we should be doing is going out to the communities and making our services more accessible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Grove, did you have a question or two?
I did, and forgive me if you've already answered these questions. I've had 3 committees this morning running back and forth, so I really apologize. I know that... bless you. You okay? Mm-hmm. The state of California used to have a Waste Watchers website, which was established by Governor Schwarzenegger, and it was a way that public employees could submit suggestions of improving government efficiency. And by July of 2010, the site received 5,500 suggestions, and with that, they're estimating there was a $24.5 million on savings and an ongoing of $1.3 million per year, along with some other things. That has since been disconnected. Now it's on some state sites, but when you click on it, it doesn't go anywhere. So it's been disconnected along with the phone number to report these things. So did you say that you had that in Los Angeles? Or are you trying to establish that? Or do you have an internet service where your employees, state employees, can tell you that, hey, Janie just got a new computer and a new printer, and we've shared one for 2 years, and now she has her own? Or
Well, we have 2 functions. We have the fraud hotline, that's managed by our auditor controller. We have our county efficiency intranet, not internet, because it's restricted to county staff website, where we accept and encourage county employees to send in their ideas. Now, what we try to emphasize is the positive, not try. We absolutely emphasize the positive. This is not a gotcha site.
Right.
You know, we have our whistleblower, we have our fraud hotlines for the gotcha process. I tend to take a positive spin on what we're trying to do. And instead of saying, oh, here's someone who is doing something real bad, because you have a vehicle and a forum for that, this is what we could do to make our programs and services more efficient. So that's how we're structuring this.
Okay, and then I came at the last end of Mr. Hagman's question, so I hope I'm not overlapping again. But apparently, the federal government, between the federal government and the state, they own about 58% of everything in California. And you were talking about buildings. So if a county or a state or a federal agency owns a building, they don't pay any taxes on it. What about, especially with some findings that we had on an audit for DGS, that in businesses leased by the state that had greater than 50,000 square feet, the auditor found that over 20% of that workspace was vacant. So why not get rid of some of those buildings that aren't full? And I understand the idea of being from a farming community, and you don't know, when there's no land, and you want to hold on to it. But if it was in the hands of the private sector, even leased back to the state, the private sector would pay taxes on that property, correct?
True.
Okay, so there would be a revenue source if it was in the hands of the private sector.
We have, I had mentioned that we have a real estate asset, a real asset group in my office, in our chief executive office. And it's a very active office, and we look at opportunities to not only reduce our lease payments, but also to improve how we use that space. Because we've had situations where a building would be half empty. Or is there an opportunity, if it's a county building, to move another county function into it who is currently occupying leased space? Or is there other opportunities to bring in through a partnership with another local provider of healthcare services into that building to make the services more accessible to staff? So we also have that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
This gentleman next to me, Frank, he's the person who manages this program, who reviews the intranet site on an ongoing basis, who identifies those applications or those ideas that have a countywide application, sends information out, works with departmental efficiency coordinators. The only way it works is through the having someone on it all the time.
And as noted, we have a number of committees going this morning, which is why you
Sure.
see people coming and going. But I think you can tell from the questions that there's a lot of interest in this subject. And my colleagues have covered a number of the topics that I wanted to get into a little bit, but a few I want to pursue. And just on this last point, does Los Angeles County have a facilities master plan?
Oh, yes.
I assumed you did, but that helps with all these issues regarding how you use your real estate and what you hang on to, what you sell, or where you have leased facilities. All those kinds of questions, I'm assuming.
Yes.
You know, the perhaps the most interesting aspect of this is how you create the culture and how you sustain it. And a number of people were asking questions, a number of members were asking questions about this. But from your testimony, it sounds as if having senior leadership committed is foundational as one element. And I'm curious how you have persuaded your senior leadership to be committed to this. I mean, you as the county executive can say you shall be committed, and that certainly gets a certain amount of adherence, but it's got to go deeper than that. They have to believe in it. So you started this in 2009. You've been at it a couple years, and I'm curious just if you would please elaborate on how you have infused your senior leadership, first of all, with a commitment to the program.
Well, I'm a pretty persuasive guy, so. But aside from that, when I mentioned that We have a very, because of our, well, not just because of our size, any county has a very structured, very elaborate budget process. It just doesn't happen overnight, especially with our $24 billion budget. In the budget instructions, it says you must address your efficiency initiatives. And those who are not actively pursuing efficiencies, they know that there will be no infusion of new funds into the budget, or the consequences, the possible reduction of some of their programs or services. I have a monthly department head meeting. We talk about efficiencies every month. Frank is sending information out to their coordinators constantly. We've insisted that on their efficiency, the local efficiency team, if you want to call it a team for each department, it must be staffed with a senior manager. In some departments, it's a department head, he or herself, staffing it. But it has to be, I would say, emphasized, in some respects, championed on an ongoing basis, because we talk about it constantly. But when folks see that there's the potential for sharing in some of the money that's saved through this initiative, that's huge. But then it becomes very personalized. When you make it a factor on their own performance-based pay program, that's very personal. And you tell them, well, if it's not there, if you're not pushing it, if you don't have a program at all, then there's also a negative consequence. I tend to emphasize the positive, but it can't be just announced and you walk away.
Absolutely.
You do that. How many times have we seen programs, we announce energy savings, we do this big thing to save energy, and we're real hard for 6 months, 7 months, 9 months, a year, and then 2 or 3 years from now you go, well, what happened to that energy savings thing? What are we doing? Every single building we're constructing would be at least the silver level. We have one we're pushing is going to hit the gold level, LEED level. So we're trying to, we've incorporated into our just, it's part of our culture now. It's taken time, and it takes a lot of effort, but it has to be pushed by the, if you push it by the department head down into the rank and file. When our Parks and Rec person had that workshop of over 400 people, starting from the custodians up to his assistant directors, that speaks volumes.
And it sounds as if you not only have built it into your budget process, but I think you also said you have built it into your strategic plan.
Yes.
And then you also report to the board. I know we got a copy of your
Yes.
third report from a month or two ago. How often do you report to the board on this?
Quarterly. Okay. Between 4 to 6 months, there's we're trying to hit a quarterly basis.
So they see it routinely as well, and it's emphasized. And you said the tracking is a key component. So that's available anytime to any county employee to look at
Yes.
what's going on across the entire county landscape of
Yes.
what's happening with efficiency initiatives and measures?
I wish I could show it to you, but and you're welcome. We can get you access. We can maybe print out our latest report from each department, and it's literally it's a worksheet that has every department listed, their current initiatives and their status and the potential savings. And so anyone can look at it, and we encourage department heads to look at it to see if there's something that has that could be applied to their department.
And then the intranet component of this, where any employee can communicate an idea, I take it is something else you would cite as a key component of making this
absolutely.
initiative successful.
Absolutely.
So is it the leadership, the tracking, the employee participation, those three elements at least, are there any others that you would cite as crucial to making this successful?
Yes. What we try to do is, as Bill mentioned, introduce the culture. And the one thing that I keep on talking with department heads and their senior management is that think about it as your own household. Think about your department as your own household. Okay, during tough times, we need to cut back. Number one, if this is your own house, okay, you're probably not going to leave the lights on when you go to bed, so you will turn off the lights. When you look at your phone bills, if there are extra phone lines that you're not paying for, you want to cut it off. If you have a computer, when you're done with the computer, okay, you will turn off the computer and not leave it on at night. So I try to have people, again, personalize what they're doing. Look at the department budget as your own budget. I think once they understand that concept, then they start going back and go, okay, what are the money that we're spending? What are the things that we can cut? What is the waste that we're going through right now? You know, if I'm paying my gardener $100 a month, okay, I may look at it and go, okay, how can I shrink down that budget, you know, to what I'm paying right now, $60 a month. So it's just going through the individual process, you know, during budget time and just through regular expenses, talking to my administrative deputy and trying to figure out what money we're spending that we can cut. And I think as soon as they understand that idea, they automatically take over and then try to look, as Bill mentioned, every corner in their department and try to save money.
And then you mentioned you do have a recognition or rewards program, and it wasn't quite clear. It sounds like sometimes people take advantage of that and sometimes not. I wasn't quite sure how that's implemented.
There is a program that provides a monetary reward for folks who come up with ideas. Anyone could file or request that their idea goes through that particular program. What I've emphasized, because I talk to as many, I go to groups of, you know, I go to county departments and talk to large groups of county employees. In any meeting I've had with the department heads, what I emphasize is this is not the time for personal gain. This is the time for all of us to work together to find ways to save money so that we're not laying off the person sitting next to you. And I get as basic as that. I tell folks, you know, because we have examples in LA County of a lot of cities who have placed their employees on furloughs. We have not done that, and there's no stronger example of the result or the positive consequence of identifying efficiencies. I said $200 million that we've saved, and not fancy government math. This is hardcore dollars. This is dollars we can point to. And we say there's $200 million, guess what? That just saved, you know, 2 or 3 furlough days a year. And it resonates with people. They can see that because it's easy when they have people in their own family or in their own community groups who are going through furloughs. And they turn to our county workers and say, how come you're not going through furloughs? Well, there's a reason why. It didn't happen by accident.
So you have a rewards program that an employee can choose to decline the reward.
Oh, absolutely.
It sounds like.
I have yet to have an employee, although labor at one point stood up and said, hello, there's this program where they should share in some of the savings, and I've told them they are. You know, what they did is they just shared in the helping folks not get furloughed or laid off or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And one of my questions was what you have calculated to be your total savings on an ongoing basis. Is that $200 million?
That's at 218 right now.
So annually from your $24.2 billion budget, you're at least you calculate your savings from the initiatives at 218.
We're going to get to. I'm shooting for 300. If we can, we'll get even higher.
Mm-hmm.
We have a number of initiatives that, especially the IT ones, they take time to make to happen. Our supply chain management system for DHS took an enormous effort, and you know, code had to be written. Millions and millions, not millions, millions and millions, over 1 million lines of code had to be written. But it's we went through the number of products in a hospital or a health clinic, you know, number in the hundreds of thousands. But I know we're going to save a lot of money in that one. That was a mammoth task that's going to result in some absolute strong savings.
Mm-hmm. IT, we could probably talk about the rest of the day without any problem. So I won't. But I did have 3 discrete areas I wanted to ask about. I spent a year or 2 as a county supervisor, and one of the things that I often thought was we ought to, for example, cross-train our our animal care field service personnel to recognize signs of child neglect and abuse, because they are often out in homes and see things. Not that they're going to you wouldn't take the time or spend the money to train them completely to be social workers, obviously, but if they could spot evident signs of potential abuse or neglect, they could go back and say, hey, social workers, you might want to go out and contact the family. I'm just curious. That's an example. I'm curious if any part of your initiative or otherwise is trying to get out of silos, cross-train various kinds of efficiencies associated with that kind of initiative or effort.
Well, we've highlighted that. We clearly need to do more, but we've highlighted that where our building inspectors or fire inspectors go into a facility and they tend to have their blinders on and look at only that one aspect as it relates to their job. But we say, if you see something else that's a health and safety violation, just flag it. Just send it somewhere. Send it to your peer in another department, and that would help us identify some problems. It may not result in some absolute savings, but it results in that program efficiency. And it could save a life. But we want to instill that into our culture. But we have made efforts there. That's real difficult. But we have talked about that.
So that's not a specific part of this
No, it's not.
initiative. It's some effort made otherwise.
Well, in some respects, if there's something where an employee from another department will say he or she's working at a different facility and sees a problem or sees something that, well, in my department, we do it this way, and if Department X does the same thing, they could save a lot of money. Well, that could result and has resulted in an employee suggestion. But that's once the employees understand, and when you log on to our the county's intranet, there's a what would you call it? There's a flashing sign that says County's Efficiency Initiative. Click here, brand new. Come up with your ideas, and we advertise it. And we've had hundreds and thousands of hits on that from county employees, and they spend the time to look at it.
Mm-hmm. I thought I read that you've reduced all your intra-office correspondence to electronic only. Is that right?
We have a number of publications where we've gone from hard copy publications to just put it on the intranet, or even in some respects the internet.
Okay, so it's mainly the kind of routine publications?
Yes.
As opposed to, I want to send a memo to the Department of Revenue Recovery or whatever for my department. That may still be hard copy.
We also actively use internet.
There are a lot of interoffice memo have all been converted to electronic copy only.
Have you been able to quantify savings as a result of doing that?
Not for the interoffice memo, but in terms of the county publications that Bill has mentioned, we have run numbers, and it showed that for our county digest, I believe the savings is here.
We had a monthly.
That one publication is $160,000 annually. On a similar initiative, our auditor controller is moving towards electronic pay stubs, because for who knows how many years we've been getting our pay stub on paper.
Even those who have direct deposit, I don't know what happens in the state level. If you have direct deposit, do you get a pay stub?
Right.
We're moving away from the pay stub.
Right. We still get a paper pay stub.
We're going to it's going to be, so far we have half a dozen, if not 10 departments, or it's solely electronic pay stub, where you can go online and review your pay stub. Hopefully they're not going online and printing it, they're going online. But what happens is that at any given day, you'll see, I don't know about dozens, but you'll see a number of employees lined up to pick up those pay stubs, deliver them to a department, all the field operations, and then someone else passes them out. That's a lot of staff hours, let alone the cost to print that particular pay stub. For just those 6 to 10 departments, we're going to save $1 million annually. Once we get to all 37, 38 departments or offices, it'll be, $3, $4, $5 million. But that's just in the just the work to produce a pay stub. That does not count the time for staff to put them in boxes and deliver them somewhere and distribute them to all the staff. That took a lot of time. We're trying to go to mandatory direct deposit, but there's some challenges there.
I assume that Los Angeles County received a fairly substantial check under the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. And I was just curious whether you have used any part of that block grant funding for increasing energy efficiency for county facilities.
We have a solar program that's been initiated. We have a goal of like the state, a 20% energy savings. We've installed solar panels at least 2, possibly 3 of our parks. We're looking at rooftop applications for our county building. We've retrofitted a number of our buildings. We've changed lights out to get to to go to the LED lights that take less energy. There are a number of initiatives throughout the county. That's something that our Internal Services Department has championed, is moving aggressively.
Yeah, and
I don't know if we use that money to change out the sprinkler systems to go to the smart sprinkler systems. But on one golf course, we changed out the sprinklers, and we received a rebate from the city's Department of Water and Power of close to $400,000. So we've taken advantage of even some of the Southern California Edison rebate programs and Department of Water and Power rebate programs. That is something we're pushing real hard.
And those are savings that you have incorporated in your accounting for this initiative, or are those separate and apart?
Maybe some. On a very limited basis, some, but to a large extent, that's separate. That's being managed through our Internal Services Energy Efficiency Program.
Okay. If there are no other questions, really very much appreciate your being here this morning and your comments and answering the questions. I think you've demonstrated that there are innumerable opportunities if people are dedicated to the proposition of trying to become more efficient and save money without reducing, perhaps even in some cases enhancing quality of service. And I think you've given us lots of good ideas that hopefully we can pursue at the state level as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.